Today, we're going to talk about the story of Heather Locklear. It's a journey that takes us from the absolute highest peaks of TV stardom through a really public, really difficult crisis, and then into the long, hard fight for recovery. And this really gets to the heart of it all. On one side, you've got the Heather Locklear everyone knew, the icon. And on the other, a police report from 2018 that sounds like it's about a completely different person. So the big question is, how did one of Hollywood's biggest, brightest stars end up here? To really understand the fall, you've got to start at the absolute top. So let's rewind a bit, back to a time when Heather Locklear was without a doubt a household name and a fixture of primetime TV. I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, you couldn't turn on your TV without seeing her. She had this amazing run with the legendary producer Aaron Spelling, starring in T.J. Hooker and the smash hit Dynasty at the same time. But, it was her role as the unforgettable, scheming Amanda Woodward on Melrose Place that really made her a superstar. She wasn't just a star, she was the star. We're talking Golden Globe nominations, magazine covers. She was the face of a whole decade of television. But you know how these stories sometimes go? Well, her star was rising on screen. Behind the scenes, away from all the cameras, her personal life was getting more and more turbulent. And those struggles, they started to break through into the public eye. What's so telling when you look at this timeline is the pattern that emerges. These were just a few isolated incidents. Over 10 years, you see a DUI, a scary hospitalization, multiple trips to rehab. It all points to this deeper struggle with mental health and substance abuse. It was clearly building towards a breaking point. And that breaking point, it arrived in 2018. This was the year that became the absolute low, marked by multiple arrests and some really alarming behavior that ended up making headlines all over the world. Okay, so the first big incident went down in February. Police got called to her home because of a violent altercation with her boyfriend, Chris Heiser. She ended up getting arrested for felony domestic battery, and on top of that, 3 counts of battery on a police officer. And to give you a sense of just how serious this was, this quote is from the police report. She allegedly said this directly to the deputies while they were arresting her. And they took it so seriously that it led to a search warrant to find a firearm that was registered in her name. Just wow. Then, just a few months later, in June, it happened again. Emergency services were called back to her home. This time, a family member reported that she was extremely intoxicated, and that led to another really volatile situation. So during this call, she actually physically assaulted both a deputy and an EMT, the very people who were there trying to help her. This led to her second arrest in less than 5 months, this time for battery on emergency personnel. And of course, these repeated incidents weren't just going to be tabloid fodder. They led to some very serious legal charges that came with the very real possibility of spending time in jail. So by August of 2019, it was time to face the music. She pleaded no contest to 8 misdemeanors, all stemming from those 2 chaotic arrests back in 2018. The judge handed down the sentence, 120 days in jail. And at that moment, it really seemed like a jarring, definitive consequence for everything that had happened. But here's the twist. That jail sentence was stayed. Basically, it was suspended. She was given a chance to avoid prison, but it came with one very specific, very strict condition. The deal was this. She was ordered to check into a residential mental health facility and complete a 30-day program. This wasn't a punishment, really. It was a court-ordered ultimatum. Get help or go to jail. And that, right there, was the definitive turning point in her whole journey. So, faced with that pretty stark choice, Locklear began the incredibly difficult work of recovery. And this is where the entire narrative starts to shift, from a story of crisis to a story of resilience and eventually hope. She posted this really powerful quote on social media back in 2018, and it signaled a huge shift in her thinking. She was reframing her struggle, not seeing herself as a victim, but as a fighter who was turning her recovery into a source of strength. Recovery is the best revenge. That's powerful stuff. Her journey also highlights something really important about addiction. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the relapse rate for substance abuse is between 40 and 60%. And what's wild is that's almost the exact same relapse rate for other chronic diseases like asthma and high blood pressure. It just really puts into perspective how long and difficult the road to recovery truly is for anyone. And you can really see that road to recovery here. Ever since she committed to it in 2019, she has maintained her sobriety. This timeline, it isn't just a list of dates, it represents a quiet, determined effort, all happening away from the headlines. She marked a year sober, she went back to work, and most importantly, she focused on healing with her family, choosing a private path instead of a public performance. So after this incredibly public fall from grace and this very quiet, determined journey back, what's the biggest takeaway from her story? Well, for Locklear herself, it really seems to be about a huge shift in perspective. Hearing her say this in her own words from 2024, it's clear she's found this deep sense of gratitude, not for fame, not for looks, but for the simple, fundamental gift of being alive and being loved. And that is a powerful, poignant, and really hopeful end to a story about resilience in the face of some incredible adversity.